Hey, welcome back to Learning Self-Reliance. Today I've got some bad news. My wife and I, we lost two of our beehives here. We've got one left. We started off with a hive 2 years ago, lost it. This last year we started off with 3 hives, we lost 2. We lost one towards the end of last year, but we did capture that one hive and it looked like it was doing pretty good. That's the one behind me over here. But unfortunately, it looks like that hive has died and this one as well. So we've only got one hive left. I wanted to give you guys some shots of what these bees kind of look like right now and kind of how, I want to talk about quickly how I could kind of tell something was wrong. First thing I noticed when this was wrong is on the back of the hive here is an outlet. And the bees usually would dump their dead bees out here and there's no dead bees, which you think would be a good thing, but conversely, it means that the bees aren't cleaning out the bees that are definitely going to die. There's so many of them that they're gonna die, and they need to be cleaning it out. Let me give you a shot of the other 2 hives here, and we'll show you what a good hive looks like. We're gonna take a peek through the top entrance, and I'll show you guys the active bees inside. But at the bottom here, there's a collection of dead bees, which is good. That means the bees are cleaning out. I probably need to brush these bees off, make it so there's an open pathway so that they can take those dead bodies out. But let's take a peek inside and I'll show you guys what an active colony looks like. All right guys, I know it's kind of hard to see here because it's so dark, but I've got my flashlight out here and I'm shining it in this entrance and you can see these bees moving around. If you peek in there, you should probably be able to see some bees, but they may be down further on a frame or something like that. So if you're really worried about it, you're not seeing any dead bees or any activity at all coming from the hive, you could crack it open just a little bit and just peek inside and make sure not to freeze them out while you're doing it. Just look around, make sure they're doing all right. So let's pull apart those other dead hives here and I'll take them inside and we'll talk about what happened. All right, before we get in here, I need to go through kind of what happened and some things I can't show you on camera. So first thing I did is we made a top hive feeder for these, which is basically, if you haven't seen my video, is just like a tin turkey pan that we filled full of sugar water, put it on top inside of a box. The bees would drink from that and get the water and extra sugar that they needed for winter. We were a little bit worried about one of our hives, so I decided to make it for all of them just in case. But I believe my wife suggested that maybe we noticed some condensation when we opened it, and I'll show that to you in a sec. And we believe that the top hive feeder was somehow releasing some water, and it was condensing out of the air onto the frames or something like that, and it froze the bees. So we opened it up, noticed the condensation. We thought maybe they were going to die, but then we noticed there's still quite a few bees left. So we put it all back together real quick. It took a couple more weeks, and the bees were still doing good. But then I kept looking through the top entrance. I wouldn't open up the hive every time. You don't want to do that in the winter. So I would just look through the top entrance and I noticed some bees just sitting there. And I thought that maybe they were just cold and so they weren't really moving at all. But then I looked again a week later and they were still in the exact same position. So I thought, well, these bees are probably dead. A couple of days later, I was pretty sure of that. And I noticed that the bees had kind of formed, there was a little bit of a crack on the top of the box of the lid, and it was kind of at an angle a little bit, and there's a small crack, just about a bee's width across. And I've shown it in some of my previous bee videos, and the bees loved it because they could go in and out really quick, and that's like they would ignore the bottom entrance and only do the top for some reason. They just liked it. But I think in the winter, once the wind was blowing, it caused a serious issue for them. And so I noticed they'd made a row of bees, and it could be that they did it on purpose and were trying to block up the wind, and those bees ended up dying there. So I ended up sealing it a bit different with some Mylar bubble wrap. You may have seen that in a previous shot and in this video. But then, anyways, back to the bees that were just sitting still. I opened it up, and sure enough, the bees weren't moving. I pulled off the top box, looked in the bottom box, and there was no bees that were moving. So I left it there for another week or two because I couldn't get the time off to do this video. So I decided to just kind of leave it out there. Nothing was going to damage it or anything. We didn't have any mice or anything running around. So we just left it sitting outside in the cold. The captured hive, this one right here, this is the one that we captured earlier last year. and I'm really not sure what happened to this hive. So we're going to look through it. Some things we want to pay attention to is like the condensation. Is that actually condensation, or is it possibly honey that's leaking out? I could have confused my wife and I, and it wasn't water, it was actually honey, something like that. We also need to look for mites. If there's a whole bunch of mites on the bees, it could be that the mites killed them. But right now I'm leaning towards the condensation that killed them. So let's go ahead and open this up and look through it. All right, let's start off with one of these middle frames here. It's kind of, I find it pretty difficult to get some frames out sometimes. There we go. Once I get that first frame out, it's going to make things a lot easier. There we go. All right. So this is a mostly honey. We got some bee bread, some pollen right there. This one is mostly pollen, a little bit of honey on the side here. Okay. Nothing really suspicious. I'm looking through this. Doesn't seem suspicious. I don't really see any eggs, which is not a surprise here. I don't really think there should be eggs kind of sitting on the side like this. Let's get more to the middle here where these bees have congregated. And I bet you there we're going to get some more answers about what happened. Pretty much the same kind of frame here. Got one bee here. This smells old. I don't know how to describe it more than that, but it smells kind of dusty and old. So if you ever gone into a basement or something, it just kind of smells like old, dusty. That's what this smells like. Shouldn't smell like that, obviously, because the bees are dead. Okay, here we go. We may even see the queen in here, but I really doubt it. Yeah, these bees are quite cold. I'm seeing some like condensation showing up on them now that we've brought it inside. Look at this condensation here. And it rubs off really easily. I don't think it's quite honey. Honestly, it's really sad to see this. There's the queen. Right here. The end of my finger there. She's a bit longer than the others. You can see the bees, some of them crawled into there, into the holes. They were just trying to stay warm. And they are crowded up with each other. So this is what bees do in the winter, you know, except they'd be alive. But this is what they do. They crowd together to get some warmth here. Let's look closely through all this, and I'm going to look for some mites. And I'm not seeing, oh, I see one. I see one mite, which is normal. You're normally going to see mites. There's one mite that I can see on here. And if you're a beekeeper and you know a bit more, my wife and I are still very, very new and very unsuccessful. So if you're an experienced beekeeper, I'd love some input on this. If you guys have got some tips or some comments as to why this happened. I'm pretty sure it's the condensation. Really seems to be the biggest factor. The pollen, or the sides of this honeycomb here is like kind of speckled with stuff. Let me see if I can get kind of a close-up on some of this. Sorry, it's kind of hard with all these bees falling all over the place. But it's like kind of speckled. Hopefully you guys can kind of see that. I'm not sure if that's like bee poop or something on this, or just general, maybe their bodies decayed a little bit and some hair fell off and clumped or something like that. But I'm really not sure what that is. It could be that they weren't able to get out and relieve themselves properly because it was so cold or something. They never managed to get out. And they always had a clear exit. I made sure of that. They had a top and a bottom one, and they always had room to get in and out. So I don't think it would be a obstruction problem. Quite a bit of honey on here. I'm honestly not sure what we're going to do with these frames. I've been kind of thinking about that because I could save these frames, clean them off, freeze them. Well, actually, they're kind of already frozen, but I'll clean them off a bit, freeze them, and then give them to our hives next year as is. But the problem with that is if there's something wrong with the honey or something, they ate some chemical or something and it killed them, or if there's some disease in here like a bacteria that might not die when it freezes, it could damage them. So I don't know. I'm really not sure what we're going to do about that. We'll probably have to talk to some local beekeepers and be like, look, we had 2 hives die. Do we need to clear things out? And a lot of this, like, we couldn't collect any honey out of this because there's just so much pollen and extra gunk in it. But I don't know. Oh, look at that. That is Pure honey right there. So this is probably a good one to see if the honey's cracking out. And I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing any, like, this condensation that I'm touching does not have a honey consistency. I'm pretty sure it's just water that's been in there. And there's so little circulation when the bees are all dead that it's just somehow managed to sit there for weeks and weeks. Or it's been reforming, that's a possibility. I'm just seeing different condensation this time. Okay, so that's kind of looking through this top box. I'm gonna slide these over gently so my wife can kind of take a look at this stuff when she gets home. And hopefully she can kind of give some insight of her own on this as to what she thinks happened. But kind of cool that I found the queen. So we know she didn't just go flying off or something like that. Okay, this is the box underneath. Oh, right here, we've got a pool. And that's fairly viscous. That's definitely honey right there. I'm not gonna eat it, but that's quite viscous. So that's probably some honey that leaked out somewhere. Who knows when that happened though? So this could be like the condensation ran across some honey, liquefied it, and it dripped down. Or it could be honey that somehow leaked out. I'm not sure. This frame here is basically just honey looking down into it. A lot of these are mostly empty, but some of them are half full. And that's just honey right there. You can kind of see that that clump of bees at the top there was all that's left through that chill that happened. That is really unfortunate. There's some bees that didn't quite manage to hatch in here. Looks like some of them tried to eat their way out, but they ended up dying anyways. Yeah, like that girl right there. That looks really terrible way to go. And this just looks like more and more of the same. This was all of where the brood was. Oh, we've got some honey with speckles in it here. That could be a mold. Granted, these have been outside for quite some time. Hopefully you can kind of see that on camera. It almost looks like it's got some sort of wax covering on it, but it definitely is not. It's speckled honey. That's got to be a mold of some kind. This got too wet and the honey wasn't able to, its natural preservative failed. Yeah, more of that. I'll have to look that up. That could be something that happened. Maybe there's some sort of mold growing in their honey and it killed them. For that, yep, there's just more of this, the same in that. So there's some bee bread in there, but there's also some of this moldy looking honey on here as well. Here's some huge cells. They probably made those bigger for drones, I'm assuming. And those appear a little bit moldy as well. I keep accidentally flipping these frames over. Really shouldn't be doing that. We want to kind of keep these intact for another hive to use. We should keep them in order. So the mountains and valleys and stuff like that are pointed in the right direction. I apologize for this not being the most exciting video. I mean, it's not the most exciting to watch this all destroyed. Yeah, you can see this honey here is like kind of moldy too. I'll give you some more close-ups on that. It just seems odd. All right, this is the captured hive here. This top box was taken from our hive that died first. So I'm not even really going to go through it, but it's still quite heavy. So still got plenty of honey in there. But this is the bottom box, which was built almost entirely by the hive that we captured here. So let's start off with kind of the side here. We've got this pollen patty that they never quite managed to finish. And we're gonna try these sides up here. There we go. This one's not tacked down too much because I didn't use it. So this is an empty one, which is just fine. This hive was pretty late in the game from us. You can see that they built this out pretty well. I'm gonna look for that mold. Yep, it's got the same moldy stuff going on right there. So it's got that same mold. At least I believe that's mold. Not 100% certain, but it just really looks moldy. This next frame here looks like it's got the majority of the bees on it, so I'm going to try to be gentle when I pry this apart. I say as I realize I need to probably just smash the thing apart. Okay. Yeah, most of the bees are falling off here. So that's unfortunate. There's just a big pile of dead bees at the bottom of this frame. This is probably where they hung out the entire winter. And we did see the queen in here. She was all black, or previously. Haven't seen her yet. You ever heard that internet thing where there's like things in holes and it's nasty? Yeah, this is quite disgusting. A lot of people say it's not real, but that's actually quite disgusting in my opinion. Just the bees in the holes like that. Ugh. Okay. Push through it. This frame is so strangely shaped because this is one of the frames that, some comb that we cut out of the hive that they'd originally created. I don't see the queen here. She was pretty obvious. I don't see her in there. She's probably in that pile at the bottom of this thing. Need to look for mites here. I keep forgetting to look for mites. I've got the, this is the non-captured hive, one of the originals that we started off with. And I'm looking through this. Let me get out my little flashlight for you guys. Maybe you can see a little bit better with this. No, that's too bright. But I'm looking through this and I see quite a few mites on the ground, but I don't see any of them on the bees, which makes some sense. Probably when the bee died, the mite would go off and move. But I'm not seeing that many mites compared to the amount of bees here. Honestly, there's a lot more bees than there are mites. So I'm betting that mites were a contributing factor, but I really think that this hive died out from the chill. I was trying to think of a good way to remove these bees. I think the best option is probably a shop vac. So we're going to start off with that. Hopefully it's not too strong. It doesn't really damage the wax very much. But we're going to start off with this. Seems to be working well. So this is the hive that we captured, and I've got you guys kind of zoomed in over here because I want to show you all these little specks. So right here at the tip of my finger is a little brown speck. And over here, there's quite a bit more. Let me double check you guys can see that. Let me get this out of the way. There's like 6 or 8 of them right there. This is a lot more mites than the other hive. This is the hive we captured. I'm thinking that this hive died from mites. They had plenty of bees. So if you look across this whole bottom board here, you can see that all the bees are concentrated in this one spot. And I didn't move them here. They all died like this on this frame or 2 or 3 that were right here. So I don't think that they got chilled or anything like that. I'm not really seeing any condensation in their hive. I'm betting that they somehow maybe died from just mites, just all of these bees in here, just hundreds and hundreds of bees here, all died from mites. This hive died from mites, the other hive died from being chilled. The other hive just couldn't quite recover after it had been chilled and lost quite a few of its bees. And I think that this hive here died from mites, which makes sense. I mean, this is captured and they probably brought their mites over. We really should have treated them, but it's a bit late for that. All right, guys, well, I think I'm gonna finish vacuuming up all these bees here. I'll probably take the dead bees and throw them on our garden or something like that, a little bit of nutrients for the ground, but unfortunately, this captured hive that we were so excited for is a bust, and we'll have to try again next year. But hope you guys learned some lessons about some beekeeping from this. New people can kind of see some of the difficulties associated with it, and whether or not that's just we're idiots or this is pretty common, I'm not sure. But hopefully other people can learn from this and not make our mistakes. So thanks for watching, and please remember to like and subscribe.